I'm Rob Skinner, and this is the Rob Skinner Podcast. In this episode, I'm re-releasing my interview of Brian Craig, who recently passed away from brain cancer. This interview was originally recorded in July of 2020 and released as episode 25 of the Rob Skinner Podcast. This interview took place prior to his illness. All this and more on the Rob Skinner Podcast. Welcome back to the Rob Skinner Podcast. My goal is to inspire you to live a no-regrets life, to make this life count, and to multiply disciples, leaders, and churches. Today on the Rob Skinner Podcast, I have the pleasure of interviewing Brian Craig. Brian Craig is an evangelist, a teacher, songwriter, and worship leader, known for some of the many songs he's written that are sung in our family of churches, congregations around the world, the ICOC. Songs like Be With Me, Lord, I Need Your Love, Great Among the Nations, Anchor for the Soul. Brian and his wife Dessa have served in the full-time ministry for the past 20 years in the Los Angeles Church of Christ. They have 2 sons in college and a daughter in high school who all love God as well. Brian recently completed a master's program in ministry at Pepperdine University. Brian's the go-to for all major kingdom gatherings for theme songs and anthems. And if you've been in an ICOC church and worshiped there, it's almost guaranteed you've sung many of his songs and would recognize many songs. Today we're going to talk to Brian about his past, how he developed his talents, and how normal disciples can become more musical. And hopefully you'll get an inspiration to develop your musical talent from this conversation. Brian, welcome to the program.
Thanks, Rob. It's awesome to be here. It's an honor.
Yeah, it's great to have you. Now, Brian, first question. I usually go by Brian, but in all your songs, it's J. Brian Craig. So I just want to know, what does the J stand for?
The J stands for James. But my parents always called me by my middle name. I guess that's kind of a thing. I was born in 1971, so you don't seem like there's as many people that go by their middle name these days, but that maybe that was a thing back then. But anyways, so all my life growing up, every class, it's like I have to tell the teacher, well, actually I go by Brian, and I got to experience that again when I went back to school 4 years ago. Every class,
people calling you Jim or James.
Yeah, especially car salesmen, they'll call you Jim.
Now, I just got to ask, is that a prerequisite to have 3 names or an initial to become a musical prodigy? I mean, I think about Stephen Leslie Johnson. I think right. Sherwin McIntosh had a middle name.
E. Sherwin McIntosh.
There you go. I go, okay, what's going on there? Anything that I should know about?
Well, actually, the only reason I started using J. Brian Craig for the song when I was writing songs is when the internet was new back in the day, and I was starting to kind of publish some music. BrianCraig.com was already taken. It was like a African American realtor in Atlanta or something.
I see. Okay. So
I was like, oh, J. Brian Craig is available. So
great backstory. Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, tell me, how'd you become a Christian? I know that you come from a Church of Christ background. Can you tell me a little bit about your conversion story?
Yeah. So I'm what we sometimes call kingdom kid. Growing up in the church, I'm one of the older kingdom kids in our fellowship of churches. But my parents, we come from a Church of Christ background on both sides, many generations back. My dad for sure knows, name by name. My kids are like the 9th generation Church of Christ.
Wow.
In one track, which is a guy named Andrew Craig, who started a church in Tennessee somewhere, and then on his my dad's grandma's side, they go back to Bethany, West Virginia, which is where Alexander Campbell's from, who's kind of way back in our history. So that he thinks they were in Alexander Campbell's church.
Wow.
so, so it's Church of Christ for a long time.
So you're a Church of Christ blue blood.
Yeah, yeah.
Wow.
So, but my family got involved in the campus ministry movement, the Crossroads Church and stuff like that back in the early 70s, mid 70s or something like that. And yeah, mid 70s. We moved to Pueblo, Colorado, which was where Willie Flores had been trained at Crossroads, and then he became a campus minister for the church in Pueblo, Colorado, and the church kind of split, and they needed a pulpit minister, they used to call it back then. So my dad moved there to be the pulpit minister, and so I was like 7 years old or something. So I was born in Florida, in Homestead, Florida, and that's how we kind of got involved with Crossroads through the Florida connection and campus students who would come down our way, and then moved to Pueblo, and we were there for years. And then so I was real active in church and stuff, but teen years, kind of, I got baptized when I was in like sixth grade, which was kind of the norm in the Church of Christ to get baptized pretty young. And then teen years, at that point my repentance in sixth grade was like being mean to my sister, or you know talking back to mom and dad, or the sinful nature hadn't really fully blossomed yet, so to speak. And so then my teen years, I really was living a double life. I was active in church, involved in the camp, campus, the teen ministry, and but also like kind of a different life with my school friends. And I wouldn't drink at parties, but I would go to parties, or I wouldn't I was just trying to walk that edge.
Right.
I didn't
Right.
I wanted to fit in, but also wanted to be a follower of Christ, and it doesn't really work as we
Right.
know. So we moved to Denver my right after my sophomore year of high school, to be part of a discipling ministry. Denver had been planted by Marty Wooten from Gainesville, but with a Boston style planting, which was kind of from scratch, rather than what the campus ministry churches used to do, like with Willie, is send a campus minister to an already existing Church of Christ, and then you'd have this kind of dichotomy of older people who were sort of, in some cases, kind of lukewarm, and then all these young, fired up college students, and it wouldn't really mix, and it would cause problems. So Boston started doing, we're just from the ground up, disciples only was the terminology, churches. And so Denver was planted like that. And so we moved there because my parents wanted to get more involved in the discipling ministry as things were congealing around Boston and everything. And so when we did that, I was already kind of, I was seeing it as a fresh start. I was like, I really want to be committed. I really want to, I know I'm not doing this right, and so I was really trying to go after things more in my walk with God, and be more committed. And Marty Wooten was talking a lot about this idea of being a disciple, and what we know as the discipleship study. Those who are familiar with our study series, just the idea of Jesus calls people to total commitment. And I remember talking with my teen leader, Drew Nitchoff. He was actually my teen leader, as well as doing a lot of other things for the Denver church, but about how I don't think I ever really became a disciple when I got baptized in sixth grade. And he said, well, just hang on to that thought. We're going to kind of all go through this time of looking at our conversions coming up here, and because there was this thing that was happening in our churches called a reconstruction, where you kind of go through and every person sort of examines their conversion and all that. So I said, okay. So but I feel like it was Marty's teaching that really helped me to see that I had never been a disciple and needed to be a disciple, and so I was really questioning my conversion. So then when the reconstruction happened, I got together with some guys and really talked about my life and my faith and my walk and the fact that I, needed to totally commit. And I never really had made that total commitment in sixth grade. And so I got baptized, and that was in 1988.
Wow.
So there was, I mean, not to get too into it, there was some, I think, bad exegesis of scripture back then to say that the order, of Matthew 28 and saying one has to be a disciple before they are baptized, because them refers to the disciples, and if you just read the Greek, it's not what it says. So, but I see how even though that was maybe flawed, God used that in my own life to help me come to a true conversion, and see that I needed to be all in, and it made such a difference in my life being all in and getting baptized there going into right at the end of my junior year of high school, and so, and then been faithful ever since.
Wow. Now, how old are you, Brian?
I am 49.
Wow.
Yep.
You've got a lot of living packed into those years. Now,
Yeah.
you went from there, and when did you choose ministry? Why did you choose ministry?
That's a good question. So, I mean, part of the flavor of campus ministry in those days was we're going to change the world, which I think is awesome. And I feel like there's a resurgence of that in our churches, and just a desire to serve God. I think we probably erred on the side of the only way to change the world is being full-time in the ministry, which I don't think is true. But there was a good and healthy, kind of culture of college students wanting to be in the ministry. And so my college years were fruitful. I was very active, studied the Bible with all kinds of people, baptized a lot of people. I was a college intern for a summer, started a new campus ministry at a college, and worked with singles, and just I was super, I loved it. I just really enjoyed that, and so I really wanted to go in the ministry, but it kind of didn't work out for me. Whereas some of my friends that were kind of fellow interns and stuff, they kind of were on a track. They went into the ministry. I'm a little, I'm not kind of your typical. I'm not cut out of the same cloth as a lot of your typical evangelists that were like captain of the football team, or just very driven. I mean, like you, basically, who I really look up to, your work ethic and just intensity, and kind of a natural born leader. I don't look at myself as a natural born leader. I've learned that skill through discipling and training, but I'm a natural born artist and moody introvert, uh, you know. Um, so, so I ended up in a career. We moved out here. Greg Moretsky asked us to move out here to help with the LA church, as it was he was serving here in a particular part of the LA church in the early '90s. He had been our campus minister, my wife and I, and he was really close to us, and he really close to my wife. My wife was kind of like a daughter to Greg and Kathy, and so, and I was kind of like the daughter's boyfriend that Greg would beat up on because he loved me. But and we're still close. Greg's one of the biggest influencers in my life, probably. But so he asked us to move out here at the end of '92, right after we got engaged, and we were young. I mean, Dustin and I dated. I met her my freshman year, and in college, and we we went on 9 dates before we started going steady, because she wasn't ready for a boyfriend yet. But then we dated for 3 years. She graduated, so we were going to get married, and then we ended up moving out here. But I ended up in a career in tech. I was working for a computer reseller and doing marketing and product management, and it was a great. I mean, it was kind of like being paid to get an education, because marketing. If anybody listening has been in a marketing department, it's a great place to be, because you're kind of at the intersection of all these different parts of a company, and it was a pretty big company. it grew exponentially. And my way in was knowing computers from doing music, but I still didn't deserve to get the job I had. I was hired into sales, and then I moved into corporate sales, and then product management and marketing. I was there for 6 years, which isn't a long time for a company, but in the world of tech in the 90s, it was eternity because people were moving all over the place in the tech industry because that was kind of the dot-com era, the dot-com bubble and stuff. But anyway, I say all that to say I wouldn't trade that. I was so grateful that God worked it. Because then when I did get asked to go in the ministry in the year 2000, so 20 years ago, it wasn't just, I had a career, so I knew what it was like to work, 50, 60-hour weeks, to have that kind of experience. It's been so invaluable these last 20 years in ministry to have had that. So I see what God was doing. And the way that into the ministry was, I've always been real active in, even when I was working full time in the church and leading singles or leading teens or doing, this or doing that, leading Bible talks, doing music, media, all that kind of stuff. And so when a position opened up in our region, the region leader, Mike Santacola, gave us the opportunity. And it was a sacrifice because at the time, whereas if I would have gone kind of straight from college, it would have been like, it was a blessing, but it was also a sacrifice in that I, took a 50% pay cut. And, I had already kind of in my mind gone, okay, ministry isn't the track I'm on this track. So I came to ministry a little bit older in life than a lot of my fellow kind of interns and kind of the norm. I can't remember what age I was, but I guess I would have been almost 30. Yeah.
Okay. Well, let's just take the off ramp here and talk a little bit about this, because I think there's two things you brought up. One, you didn't think you were cut out for the ministry, or that your personality type didn't really fit the mold. And I certainly understand that. There was a hard driving type A personality that was like the prototype of anyone who wanted to go in the ministry during the 80s and 90s. That's for sure. I think everyone noticed that. So you wrestled against that. You didn't fit that, like you said. You more artsy, moody, had that kind of a different temperament, perhaps more introverted.
Yeah.
And then secondly, then you went into work for 6 years. And I think there's people listening that are like, man, I want to do something great, but I don't know if that's my type. You've got people that are very introverted that are, they really struggle because they go, I want to do something, but it doesn't seem like that's my personality type. And then secondly, there are people that are maybe a little bit older. Maybe they've already started a career. They're in their late 20s or 30s or whatever age. And they're like, I'd like to do something different, but how do I step off this treadmill here? Any comments you want to make on that? Any thoughts?
Yeah, it's all it's deep stuff. I think the biggest thing is that is God and the Spirit and His leading. We're on this journey with Him. I think trust in Him, obviously, and listening to the leading of the Spirit is the most important thing. I just felt like it was the Spirit when at the time that I got the opportunity to go into the ministry full time. It was a jumping off. It was a stepping out on faith because okay, I'm in a great career. My boss really likes me. My company really likes me. They keep giving me bonuses and stuff. But I see this. I can make, instead of so much time in my day being devoted to just selling a product for a company that I don't. I like the company, but it doesn't make a difference in the world like this can make a difference. So it was really, I want to make a difference in the world. But it was really the Spirit. I feel like the call of God. But I don't think full-time ministry is the only way to make a difference. I think, like you said, I think people are at all kinds of different places in life and career and temperament and all that. So I think the church is better, more healthy than it's ever been in that regard. If there's different, people are valued for different. It's not just sort of like you said, one prototype. I almost feel like it wasn't just one prototype for ministry. There was almost one prototype for being a Christian.
Right.
you know, and I mean, yes, not to say we shouldn't all evangelize and we shouldn't all be aspire to leadership and we shouldn't all make disciples. We should all, but we can't all be the Apostle Paul, right? There was,
That's right.
and I love the example of in Antioch where there was a team. There was these different a team of different types of people that God brought together, and to me, that's the mature church, is where you have, like Ephesians 4. There's pastors, there's teachers, there's evangelists, there's different. The body is built up as each part does its work,
Yeah.
whatever temperament you are. So I think it's rather than, I mean, I think we all want to work on our weaknesses, but I think what I've been learning more the last 10 years is to lean into my strengths. Like
Right.
what strengths can I lean into and do more for God with those. Yes, keep working on my weaknesses, but rather than just feeling like, oh, I'm no good because I don't have that gift that guy has.
Right. Right. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that, because I think many people feel limited, like they know they have talents, but they feel like maybe they're not appreciated or don't know how to use them in the context of the kingdom. And there's so much room for it. So that's great. Now let's just shift and talk a little bit more about music. Where'd you develop this talent for music?
Yeah, I've always loved music. I started sort of messing around on the. I took piano lessons when I was a kid, and then I started in probably middle school messing around with chords and trying to learn different songs off the radio. I can remember my cousin teaching me how to play that song. Sister Christian, all the
Yeah.
time has come.
Grew up on that song.
The great song.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, just learning how to play, and then starting to write in high school. I started writing little piano ditties and stuff, little piano songs, and I was also really into art. I was actually a fine art major in college for a little bit, and I do painting and drawing and stuff like that. So I was probably even more into art in high school than music, but I was in marching band and like I said, would write little songs on the piano and stuff like that. And I don't know, when I became a disciple, art had become for me such a matter of personal expression and almost like an inward thing. And not that it has to be, but that's how it was for me. And music was more outward. So as I became a disciple and I was trying to work more on just being outward and like I said, I'm a natural introvert. So learning to give myself away, learning to be expressive, music, it fit more. So I kind of started to lean more into music. And whereas in college I started as a fine arts major, I ended up with a music major. I ended up kind of shifting there, and so I'm not like I was never a music prodigy or anything, but I could had an ear for music and for songs and different instruments and stuff like that.
Okay. Well, the Church of Christ historically is an a cappella church, meaning, as you know, and going way back, and when I became a Christian, there was no instrumental music in the congregation at all, and it was kind of revolutionary when guitars started to be added to the service and songs. I mean, how did you manage that? I mean, you come from hardcore Church of Christ background, and now you are major musician, song leader. I mean, that must have been a little bit of a discord for you to kind of step into that and make that transition.
Yeah, I think the where I was and the kind of space I was in, it wasn't unnatural because, well, I'll just share kind of how it happened. So like, yeah, in the deep South, or in kind of the older Church of Christ tradition, I think there was this, like, you're not allowed to even have an instrument in the building kind of thing. But for me, growing up in our family of churches, it wasn't like that. Instruments weren't used in the worship service, but if you had a wedding, I watched all these college students becoming Christians and getting married and stuff like that. The college ministry at Pueblo, Colorado, they were baptizing 100 people a year back in the 70s, which is amazing, at this little college. And at weddings there would be people perform songs. At the church banquet there would be people perform things, with a guitar or this. So I there was performance things, just not in the. There was sort of two tracks for some reason. When it came to singing the congregational worship, it was all a cappella, like you said, and that was such a great foundation, I think, to learn how to sing different harmonies and to hear the voice of the church. And that's something I worry about losing nowadays, and I think we don't want to give up entirely, and I think some churches have given up. So when I was in college, we would write songs. I would write a song for every campus retreat and things like that, but they would be more like a performance kind of song, like a alternative rock kind of song or whatever.
Right.
So the first songs I wrote for the church to sing were like this song, "Thank You, Lord," and that was the first one. The second one was "I Need Your Love," and "Be With Me, Lord." Those were written to be a cappella songs. They were not written with instrumentation in mind at all. So it was we were still a cappella. But I remember the first time using a guitar. There was a all LA women's service, and Tammy Fleming said, "Why don't you play guitar? Because we don't have any guys coming. We don't have any harmony." So I was like, "Huh, okay, I could try that." So I played "Be." She wanted me to come and do "Be With Me, Lord," so I did "Be With Me, Lord," play guitar with it. So that was the first time I ever played, that song with an instrument. I was like, I
Right.
kind of like this.
So you kind of backed your way into it a little
Yeah,
bit, just kind of eased your way into it. And I
yeah,
think that's a concern that a lot of people feel like if you were converted in the 80s and 90s, I mean, there was powerful a cappella singing. I mean, just
yeah,
kind of hair raising, just inspiring, just powerful. And yet, that you don't see that as much in terms of the part singing and things like that. Hopefully we can come back to that. Now, how many songs have you written, Brian?
yeah. People ask me that. I don't know. I kind of, I don't know if it's like a David's Mighty Men counting the David's counting his mighty men thing. I'm like almost afraid to count them, like it's but I know it's well over 100, because I write a lot of songs that aren't necessarily congregational songs, but probably 50 or more songs that are kind of congregational ones, and then probably I don't know, 100 of other types of songs and stuff. So I've written a lot of songs, and
That's a
some are
lot.
fully formed, some are not, have never been released, some are still kind of working on. So
Right. Now, what did you say was your first song that you wrote that we would know?
well, the first congregational song I wrote was it didn't really catch on necessarily, but it's a song called "Thank You, Lord." It goes, "Thank you, Lord, for giving me salvation. There's hope for every nation in the living way." I don't know if you've ever heard that one, but it was kind of I call it a kind of a Michael Jackson song, because it was like I was working as a room service waiter, and I would walk the floors of these. This is in the Hyatt in Long Beach, and I would walk the floors of the hotel picking up all the room service trays. And I just got this song in my head, and so it was more of a performance song, I guess, at first, but we still did it kind of with the a cappella group. But the original verse was like, "It was grace that saved me, your blood that bathed me, your love that gave me everything I need." So you can tell it has kind of a Michael Jackson vibe to it.
Definitely
And
has
then,
that. That's
and
great.
then the chorus, But so later I changed the verses to try to be a little simpler for the church to be able to sing. And we sing it here, but and then the one that people know is "I Need Your Love." And that song, honestly, I wrote because I was so tired of the song "Sanctuary." And we sang "Sanctuary" all the time, and I was like, what song could we sing that, I mean, I want to write a song that we could sing instead of "Sanctuary." So "I Need Your Love" was written to kind of the same sort of feel, or the same kind of theological
Right.
space of
Right. That's great.
yeah.
What do you consider what are your top three favorite songs that you've written?
um that's a good question. I mean, I think it changes, and there's some that last the test of time and some that don't. I mean, I think because there's songs I get tired of my own songs, and we stopped singing them. So like we stopped singing "I Need Your." Like I said, I got tired of Sanctuary. We stopped singing "I Need Your Love" for years and years, and now I like it again because we put it away for a while. And that's kind of how I feel about like "Anchor for the Soul" or "Praise Heard Around the World" now or whatever. But my favorite songs I've written right now are actually not congregational songs, but I did an alternative rock project. It's under a band name called Ties to the Light, and there's a couple songs on there that are just like my favorite songs right now that I've written. One is called, and just because of the meaning they have in my life right now, one is called Clean Getaway, and it's about getting up into the mountains and just kind of getting out of the city. And I got up to Big Bear last week, or the week before, and I didn't realize how much my soul just needed it. I think because I became a Christian, I was living in the foothills and I would go into the mountains, and something about the mountains just connects me to God. And so that song is about that, about getting up out of the city. And then there's another song that I'd written. It was actually inspired by the Me Too movement and Black Lives Matter, but I was thinking about both, but it was before all of the awareness of racial injustice and things that are going on right now. But it's called "Spark Becomes a Fire," and that's kind of another favorite song right now, just because it's so right now, and it's like kind of funny that I wrote that a couple years ago because it's like basically talking about exactly what's happening right now. But as far as congregational songs, probably the one I like the most right now is one called "Shadow of Your Wings." I don't know if people know that one either, but that one I wrote for a camp. We do a youth camp here every summer, and I've gone to youth camp for 10 years, and or maybe it's 9 years. But anyway, I love just there's something about camp. These kids that are in middle school that are just developing a relationship with God, belting out with all their hearts to God, and then the college students kind of age that go up to be their counselors are just such good-hearted, amazing people. So the worship there, we always have like a 45-minute worship block for 4 nights out of the 5, and it's just incredible. But "Shadow of Your Wings" is one I wrote kind of for camp, and it's based on Psalm 57, and the song just never gets old for me. I just love it.
That's awesome.
Our teens are doing a teen-led service this Sunday, and they picked that song to sing, and they were all campers at one point, so it kind of means, I think it probably means camp for them. And so I'm actually right now working on mixing all their little faces together singing that song. So I really love that song.
That's great. That's fantastic. Now, we were just talking about the mountains there. When someone calls you, you get a phone call from someone and they say, "Hey, Brian," let's say it's Mike Tolliver, and he's planning the 2012 discipleship summit on the mountain of the Lord. And you get the shoulder tap to come in and write the theme for the entire kingdom. Walk me through the process. Like, what do you do once you get that phone call?
That's a good question. I mean, it's an honor to get to be asked to do stuff like that. I think I pray about it a lot. I try, if there's any text that the thing is based on, I try to find out about that. So like in the case of "On the Mountain of the Lord," it was based on the story of Abraham and Isaac, and it said even to this day there's this saying that came from that time: "On the mountain of the Lord it will be provided." And that was kind of a new angle I never thought of, that story for Abraham became about how God provides, and because God provided the ram, and God will call us to ask us to sacrifice, but then he makes up, he always comes through with what we lack, And I just thought that was a great saying: "On the mountain of the Lord it will be provided." So I try to get in the space of what are we trying to accomplish with this song, or what is the sort of theme of this event? What's the feel? What are we going for? Is it a conquering thing? Like when we had a campus retreat called Bent on Conquest. That's a conquering theme, and it was a very revelation oriented. It's from a vision and revelation of the writer Bent on Conquest. So for that song, it was like, okay, I want it to be this kind of conquering vibe and
Right.
a lot of revelation stuff. And so I try to get in that place, and then the songs that turn out best are ones where there's some kind of hook that has a hook to it comes with the melody. So like, on the mountain of the Lord it will be provided, or great among the nations. So like when I was asked to write that song, it was like, that song is really about kingdom prophecy in the Old Testament. That's where that verse comes from, and this vision of the kingdom that these prophets had. So,
What conference?
but I don't
what
have
conference
any of the
was
lyrics.
that? Great Among the Nations.
It was a Middle East conference back in, probably 96 or something
Wow.
like that.
Okay.
Maybe later. I don't know, 97.
I mean, how do you deal with the pressure? I mean, it's one thing to go for a prayer walk and all of a sudden a song comes to your mind, but it's another thing to say, hey, you're commissioned. You got to come up with this. We've got a deadline. It needs to be done in 3 months. I mean, just how do you just deal with the mindset of like, oh, I have to produce something inspirational here that everyone's counting on?
Yeah. Well, I try to not think about not think about that, and it's the way I've come about this anyway is like, it's been more of, people will ask me, like, I'll get asked by younger people, hey, I have a vision, I want to sing at the next conference, or I want to write the next theme song, or I want to, and that's not how I ended up doing that stuff. I'm not the best. I think I'm a good songwriter. I write. I'm kind of like a Tom Petty of the kingdom. Like, I write good,
I love Tom
catchy
Petty. He's one of
song.
my favorites.
I love Tom Petty, but nobody goes, oh, I just love Tom Petty's voice. Like, it just
Right.
moves me.
He kind of sounds like a little bit like Bob Dylan, a little bit mixed in there with Neil Young a little bit. He's
Yeah,
just that
exactly.
kind of
He doesn't have a bad voice. It's just, I mean, he's good. He's a good singer. It's just, it's his songwriting. He's catchy. Right?
Yes,
Great,
definitely.
catchy songs. So I feel like that's where God's blessed me, is with, I have and I can talk more about, I think, maybe some tips about how to do that. But I just get earworms in my own ear, and then I pass them on to other people, and so I'm good at writing something catchy that stays in people's minds. But I didn't. I was writing, like when I wrote "I Need Your Love," it wasn't for all of the churches, or it's just, this is for my own little church where I'm so tired of sanctuary. I want to teach us something else, and then God worked through these different, and like, in fact, that song, I remember having a big service. It was a regional service, and I wanted to try to teach it to our group, or to our region, and that time was probably, I don't know, 500 people or something, and printing. So I made the sheet music and wrote all the lyrics by hand, because I didn't have the software to do that, and then photocopied them all. We had them on all the seats, and then it was one of those services where things are running long, and so it was like, okay, we're gonna have to scratch the song. And I remember, feeling like, okay, well, I guess that was the one chance for people to ever learn that song, and just, oh well, what a waste, but whatever, like, you have to kind of sacrifice that, because you're like, artistic people, we want to share our art, and it's
Right.
like, okay, this is the moment I get to share it, and then, oh, we're not going to use the song, okay, whatever. But it's funny to look back on that moment now, where that song is sung. Like, somebody sent me a video of people in China singing this song in Chinese.
So
I'm like,
awesome.
I had to ask somebody, what language is that? But just because of how things worked out, so I think if you just serve God with your talent and let God do what he's going to do with it, don't be concerned with, okay, I have to like force my way in. So I think because I've come to it that way, I feel like it's about God and not me anyways. So I don't feel the pressure. Like, if people don't like this, or if it's not the right thing, whatever.
Mm.
You know?
That's a lot of wisdom right there. It really
Yeah.
is. Just takes the pressure off from the goal of achieving an object to just loving the the art itself, the intrinsic, hey, I want to serve God with this, whether it gets recognized or not.
Yeah.
That's great. Thank you. I want to come back to that because I think I want to talk to you just a little bit about the process, but let's go on here. How you're an evangelist, you're a teacher, you just finished your master's, you're a songwriter, you're a performer. I mean, that's a lot of skill right there. That's a lot of responsibility, and you're trying to raise a spiritual family. Your kids are walking in the faith. You got a marriage to deal with. How do you keep all that together, Brian? That's just a lot. I mean, there's a lot of moving parts there. Plus, you're a technical guy. I can see into your studio there. There's a lot of technical stuff going on. How do you balance all that stuff?
Yeah, I think I wish I knew. So whatever guest gives you the answer, get back to me. I think I definitely the most important thing I think is walk with God. I mean, I think you got to have because I feel like God will help me prioritize. His Spirit will speak to me, and like there's things that I still haven't done that His Spirit keeps saying, you got to do that, 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 and it's funny because sometimes the things that have had the most impact, at least broad impact, that wasn't the major thing I was doing. Like even the whole music thing that people know me for writing these songs and all that. That's not like my day job. You know what I mean? Like it's
Right.
just sort of a side thing, and then God used it in a way that is just I just kind of watch it happen and go, wow, that's really cool. I'm almost like a on the sidelines watching God
Mm-hmm.
do something. So I think him directing us is the most important thing, and so just having a great quiet time every day. I'm kind of because I'm the way I'm made. I'm not the type of person that's like, okay, I'm gonna have this. I wish I was more like this, but like this super disciplined schedule. I think you might be a little more like that. Like, okay, it's gonna be 5 a.m. workout, 6 a.m. quiet time,
Yes.
7 a.m. make
Right.
my ministry calls, 8 o'clock. I'm
Right.
just
Right.
that makes me deflate. Whereas some people they get inspired by that
Right.
idea.
Right.
I'm more like I just want to go with the flow and go with the.
There was I gotta just take a look.
So I have my almost more of like after the fact. What's that?
Oh no! I remember a brother he was also was a song leader, and I was doing a class on ministry practicals, and he said, I feel like I need to take a shot of whiskey before I attend your class because of all the practicals I know I'm going to be handed. He goes, it's just not my nature. He was kidding,
Yeah,
but I understood what you're saying there.
yeah. There, it's good. It's good stuff. I mean, people. I was with Kevin Maines for many, many years. He's just very driven. Like Kevin's the type of guy that he would on vacation he'd get up at 5 or 6 so he could make ministry calls while the rest of the family's sleeping and kind of get away with it. you know, I'm just not like that at
Right.
all.
Right.
Um, I'll track. I have certain things I want to try to hit every day. Being in school, obviously that does a lot for you. There's the deadlines you have to meet, ministry things. Okay, I got to preach this Sunday. I got to get my sermon done by Thursday, so I have time to think about it for a few days. And so there's deadlines I manage, and I have a journal, and I try to manage all my to dos. But then on my schedule, I build in blocks, but then I also track what I've been doing. So at least when I look back, because I'm kind of more of a guilty conscience, like what have I been doing, so I can
Right.
look back and okay, that's how I spent my time,
That's right.
and so I track that. But I think I just pray that God will help me with with all that I
That's
got
great.
going. Just got to make time for sure to talk to my wife every day and connect with her. She, we make sure in the evenings we have time to talk and download and make sure I'm trying to get time with each kid. But there's times I wish I would have spent more time here or more time there, or
Yeah.
things that are on the to-do list that, home ownership types of things that
Mm-hmm.
kind of never get done.
Right.
But that's life, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think that offers hope to a lot of people because, again, there's not just one type of personality, or there's room for achievement regardless of whatever your personality type is or your style of managing your life. So that's great. You're getting the most important things done no matter how you schedule it. So that's excellent.
Yeah, and I just add a couple more things I think I've learned more recently is so I feel like we used to, and I don't know if this is a lot of people, but at least where I was surrounded by, it felt like it was sinful to get 8 hours of sleep. Like the righteous thing is to get up, go to bed at midnight and get up at 6 and whatever. And so I would try to push myself, but then I would end up grumpy and then I would just get sick. I would just
Right.
always, I'm just somebody, I need 8 or 9 hours of sleep or I just get sick.
Right.
And then that's even worse. So I've learned it's okay to get sleep, and I listened to your podcast with John Lusk. I like what he said about doing things that inspire you or kind of fill your tank.
Right.
I think that's something too that I've learned is important. Exercise. Just like in order to be creative, you have to have downtime. You have to have time to just breathe. So I think that's helped a lot. I think I'm more productive when I'm taking time to just mow the lawn and trying to. I'm not a strict Sabbath keeper, but I feel convicted about that. I'm like, we follow all the other 10 commandments, but not the one to keep the Sabbath. So in principle, I try to, like Mondays, I try to just have downtime, but I need to do better with that. But
That's great. That's great. So that was my next question. What's your schedule look like? It sounds like it's varied, and essentially it's just object. You just focus on this and then that, and
yeah, I mean, a couple of things on the schedule. I mean, we there's certain habits. Quiet. I usually do about a 2 hour quiet time in the mornings, and my wife and I have our planning time on Friday mornings typically, and we block out a big chunk of time to sort of plan our next week. So we'll plan like our discipling appointments and our studies, and kind of let each other know we put a good chunk of time into planning that next week. So we love Fridays because the weekend's always crazy. So Friday sets us up for it, and so we've been doing that for many years, and it's also time for us just to connect with how are we doing and what's going on with the family, and for finances or anything like that. I usually ask how are you feeling and how am I doing, and as a husband or as a father, I'm one of those. It's easier for me to ask and receive feedback than to just get it along the way. So set myself up to be humble, and
getting ambushed.
earlier in marriage there would be a lot of stuff to work through, and these days she doesn't have much. But yeah, habits like that help, and it's weird lately because our kids. My oldest is 21, the next one's 18, and my daughter's 16. They're both turning. Actually, my son is going to be turning 19 here this month, and my daughter's turning 16. But so we're kind of like living in the dorms right now because the kids, once the school shut down, I mean, they're like, so like I was up at 1:30 last night. I mean, it's like, it's kind of crazy. So our schedule's a little nuts right now, but hopefully we'll be back to normal before too
What do you
long.
mean by living in the dorms? Because they're back home with you?
They're all three at home, and so they're on with their friends, and it's just a late night environment. So I
I
remember
see.
when
Okay.
COVID first started, and we were sort of all in quarantine. The kids are up and they're talking to my son's on Xbox yelling and talking to these campus students, and like, honey, I feel like we're back in the dorms.
Great. Oh, that's funny. Now, we've got people there that are like, okay, I'd like to develop my musical skills. And maybe they don't have any, grand musical aspirations, but they want to get better. I mean, I certainly feel that way. I didn't grow up in a musical family. I took guitar lessons when I was 16, stopped after a couple of years, but I've always loved music. And what advice would you give for a person who wants to be more musical, to develop their skills? Where would they start?
Um, well, I think first, don't get overwhelmed. I think like I just look at YouTube and there's such amazing talent, there's like a 7-year-old kid that can play guitar so much better than me, and you can just feel like, well, why even try.
Right, exactly.
So I didn't have that when I was growing up, and so I remember like back when I was writing songs in high school, I kind of thought, man, these are really good songs. Like I'm up there with, Mozart, because I didn't have access to the world of everybody else writing the same songs I was writing. So, um, so now you're just saturated with so much talent. So I think just don't get overwhelmed. It's, don't, it's not about trying to be famous or something. Just personal development, serving God, you know, and and then I think just there's so many tools. There's all kinds of YouTube videos that'll teach you anything you want to learn about any instrument. I think you could even learn the theremin if you wanted to, which is this weird instrument that makes strange horror music. You can there's YouTube videos that'll teach you any instrument. So I think making some time for it. I've always made I didn't start playing guitar till college, and I never took guitar lessons or anything. I never had any formal education with guitar. I bought a nylon string guitar at a garage sale from our neighbors, and just started playing it and learning some chords, and I would incorporate it into my quiet times. I just like to play and sing songs, and so that's kind of how I developed guitar, is just a little bit at a time, just playing and singing. And nice thing about worship music is it needs to be pretty simple music, because most people in the church are not like these amazing singers. That kind of goes back to what we were talking about before. My concern with some of the music in the church is I think it's kind of record label driven, and a lot of the newer songs they're in the sweet spot for a particular performer, and they're kind of built to showcase that person's abilities rather than built for the voice of the church, which is a simple voice. So like a lot of these newer songs have these octave jumps, or they're kind of challenging vocally, and so there's a balance. I think we got to keep it simple. So I think good worship music is easy anyway, so you can learn usually 3 or 4 chords or something. So it's
okay. Well, let's talk a little bit about that. I remember one time you mentioning that when you were writing songs, you tried to make it available for people to play, whether in the cave or in the concert hall or something like that. Can you talk a little bit about that, your theory or philosophy of making music?
Yeah, like I mean, you talked about the church, the small churches, and I'm always thinking about the smaller churches and the smaller venues. And yeah, so like when I write a song, if it's for a congregational song, that's how I feel like my contribution can be, is I can write simple songs. I mean, there's people that can write a little more complicated or more maybe more musical things. And I like that I like exploring different things too. That's why I did this alternative rock project, this Ties to the Light project, because I wanted to explore some other things. But when it comes to church, I feel like I want to offer simple songs that, like you said, could be sung at a baptism or sung at a family devo, or but they could also be scaled up. You can add a band and a choir and do it really big as well. I think that to me is a great church song, is if it's scalable.
Yeah.
Because yeah, I mean, like I was at a where was it? Oh, I was at the ICMC a couple summers ago, and I was on a shuttle from the airport, or from the airport to the conference, and I was just sitting there with my bags, and some college students were there, and they were trying to take turns leading songs, and I think they were doing Praises Heard Around the World, and My Lord Heard Jerusalem, or some other really simple, like a call or response kind of song. And I just remember thinking, gosh, we need more songs like that are just simple, and anybody can just get on a bus with some other college students, just lead it.
Exactly. I mean, that's the magic, making it easy and accessible for more people. And I think it's amazing how God's used you to do that. And that's really, really powerful, because it's challenging for the normal person to to sing like a Chris Tomlin song. You know, it tends to be very high. He's got a very high voice. I love his music, but at the same time, it's like, whoa,
Yeah,
it's
he puts them
challenging.
up there.
It really
Well,
is.
I think why that is well, Chris Tomlin. The thing he does well is his songs are very catchy, and they are easy to sing if you bring them down. So like How Great Is Our God, for example. If you think about how much of the scale that occupies, it's like it's just right in this little range. It's all just right here, you know. It's not these octaves. So, but whereas a lot of the newest song coming out of, and I want to say there's not a place for these songs. I think having an awesome performer do a great song at your service, it can be really moving and powerful. It's just not going to be a song that people can sing at a baptism, or
Right. I think of
you know what I mean.
like
So I just think we
like
need both. Is
right.
what I'm saying.
I mean,
But
there've been kingdom songs like that, like Men Who Dreamed.
yeah,
We
yeah.
laugh and call that Men Who Screamed. You know.
Yes, yeah, you got to have the right person, and you got to have the right. Yeah, so I'm not saying, but some of the songs from Elevation or Bethel or Hillsong or the ones that people like are you know, I get a lot of requests for certain songs, or we should do this or do that, and a lot of them are awesome performance oriented songs, but I'm always looking for what's the simple one. So Chris Tomlin, I think, does a great job. We do a lot of his songs, you know, our God is greater, our God is stronger, God, you're higher than. Again, it's just all that whole melody is in a really narrow band, so a lot of people can sing it. And the reason I think so much is pitched in that high tenor or alto range is because I think if you think about evangelical churches on a whole, at least I've visited some for my school and for college and stuff like that. Most of the guys don't really sing; they just kind of mumble a little bit, and it's the girls that really sing. And most girls are alto, so so you know, most of the female performers in church music are alto. It's usually alto range, and then guys that sing really high, so they're in that same kind of alto range. So I think that's why it works for that genre of just sort of basically melody and then a powerful band,
Right.
and everybody's belting out that alto, and the women are all belting it out. Some of the guys are singing up high, and then most of the guys are just kind of mumbling.
Right.
That's sort
Exactly.
of the evangelical model of worship, and there's things that I don't mean to disparage it. I think there's power. I've been in spaces like with the lights down and this band just blasting through the PA, and it can be moving, right? But I don't want only that. Like, right. I don't want only that speed. I feel like there's something also so powerful about just a group of people singing with no instruments or a ukulele only or something.
Right. Right. Exactly.
I think that's can be even more moving, and you can create that so much more easily. You don't have to have lights and sound and tech and super gifted musicians and all of that stuff to get to this place of the presence of God. You know, you can have just a few people and a one instrument and a simple song, you know.
Right. Absolutely. And I remember one time you told me that you felt like what was missing in some of the popular music was the sense of mission. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah.
Because a lot of your songs are like, hey, let's make disciples, you know, praise is heard around the world. It's like there's often this drumbeat of like, hey, let's go do something.
Yeah, and I think part of that is not as much intentional as like writing songs for events that are for that purpose, you know, like Bent on Conquest or whatever, or Great Among the Nations or something where it's, but others like Go Make Disciples, that just kind of came into my head, and you know, we're obviously talking a lot about Matthew 28 at the time, and but yeah, I do think that that's been culturally a great a great aspect of our family of churches is the missionary mindset and the mission mindset, and you know, having a family of churches that there's more outside the U.S. than there are in the U.S. and and really valuing our worldwide fellowship. I think that's super important. And if you just look at the spectrum of church songs, yeah, there's not many that are written about a mission. I mean, I remember years ago, Jeff Fawcett, who wrote Hallelujah, he went to a conference of church music that was outside of our fellowship, and he tried to introduce that song, and people didn't like it at all. They said it sounds militant, because they're just looking for the sort of personal. It's so much about vertical, and I think vertical we were missing for a long time in our fellowship. I think that's something we've really grown in the last 20 years, is that vertical aspect of worship. But I think we also need the horizontal aspect of setting our eyes on the mission field, and I think it's both.
Right.
The other thing that bothers me sometimes about a lot of modern worship is sometimes it's so self-focused. It's almost like you're singing more about yourself than you are singing about God. I was on a conference. I went to a conference. There was many thousands of pastors that were on this online conference. I can't remember the name of it, but it was put on by some of the Push Pay and some of these kind of church tech companies. It was really good. The content was really good. But some church group introduced a new song. I wish I could remember the name of it, but as they were singing, it was all about me. And I like you saying you and me and to God, like I Need Your Love is a personal song. But I also think we is important to keep in our vernacular, and not to be so individualistic. But this song, and I think a lot of songs like it it's almost like, I love you, God, because you do this for me and you do that for me, and I feel this, but you do this for me, and it's this and me and this and me and my life. You know what I mean? It's like, are we singing about me or are we singing about God?
Right. Interesting. Yeah. Now, do you think that, before we go on, I got to talk about Jeff Fawcett, because Jeff Fawcett was the best man in my wedding.
Oh, that's awesome.
And even when we were in Japan, we would sing his song. Pam and I lived there for 10 years. We would sing Hallelujah in Japanese, and I got to tell you, I would struggle, because I would just love to tell people, oh yeah, he used to be my roommate. The guy that wrote this, he used to be my roommate. Actually, he's the best man in my wedding. So I have name dropped Jeff Fawcett shamelessly over the past 3 decades.
That's awesome.
But Jeff grew up in a background where his parents were both concert performers, and I think they played the oboe or some. And he grew up in a musical background. Do you think music is genetic, or can it be developed?
I think it's both, and that's cool. I knew you knew Jeff. I didn't know you were close. That's awesome.
Yes.
We've been working on some new projects, actually, some kind of alt rock projects.
We've
written
Jeff.
A couple songs together. So.
Super talented.
Yeah, and he's the one that put this whole new songbook together that we did in whatever the late 90s or something, that had a lot of these songs in it that I wrote even before I was full-time in the ministry. I was working in my tech career, and so I'm really thankful that God worked that out for us to become friends. But yeah, to answer your question, I think it's both. I think there is certainly, I think it's like sports, or other abilities. There's a natural component, and then there's the developmental component. Not everybody can become a professional basketball player, but everybody can become a better basketball player. When we were leading first in the ministry, trying to lead the church in Long Beach, I really tried to work on my basketball, practicing every day, but then I finally realized it was more of a hindrance to the kingdom of God than a help for me to be out there. But volleyball is something I can do well, and I'm a good volleyball player, so I can, go to the beach and reach out, play volleyball instead of on the basketball court. But so I think music is like that. There is a natural ability that people have and can develop more, but I think everybody can grow in it. And I think there's more. I mean, when I see our teens and working with younger people, it seems like there are more gifted people than ever in our churches, because I think maybe it's because of the access to YouTube and Instagram and these tools. My daughter just started playing ukulele on her own. You know, I tried to we tried to get our kids into music lessons and things like that, but I also tried to not push them, and wasn't sure if they would do it or not. But all three of our kids did band, and my oldest son played trombone in band, and then my middle son played French horn, and he ended up doing that, but also really excelling in kind of the technical aspects of marching band. He ended up becoming a band manager and then band president and kind of all this other stuff with band. But my daughter started just playing ukulele on her own and started writing songs on her own, and man, she writes some awesome songs. We put a whole album together of her songs about a year ago, and but her and her friends and some of these young people, it's just amazing how many people have just a gift of playing an instrument here or there, maybe because there's so many tools that they can use to learn it. She'll show me some of this stuff. Like there's this new app, you can put any song in, like any YouTube link to a song, and it'll automatically tell you what all the chords are.
Oh my gosh, what's the name of the app?
I don't know. I can find out and text you.
Okay.
She showed it to me. I was like, that's incredible. She was like, look, my own songs are on there. So since her name's Cora Craig, so you can, and her songs are on the streaming platforms, so you can put her song in, and then it'll put the chords of her songs. So she she just thought that was so cool.
That's fantastic.
Because there's songs that she wrote and we recorded, and then she couldn't remember how to play. So it's
right.
kind of funny.
Right, exactly.
Use the app to come back to it.
Well, that's your kids must feel a little bit of pressure, I'm sure. Preacher dad plus performer dad and songwriter dad, but we won't go. We won't go there.
Not make them feel too much.
Exactly. Well, what can a person do who doesn't think they sing that well to improve their singing? I mean, this is a big issue, because I remember when I was a young minister and our song leader was out. We were having a park service, and so I had to step in to lead songs, and it was like a campus ministry. So I led songs, and I was walking away with my girlfriend at the time, Pam. We later got married, but I remember just sheepishly saying, "Hey, so what'd you think about the service?" And she said, "Sermon was good." She said, "But I don't think I'd ever lead songs again." That's what she said. And I mean, it was kind of a crossroads in our relationship. I was so humiliated by that. I was so embarrassed, and I'm sure she was right. But it was like, oh, I don't think she really respects me, and my musical skills are not super great. But what advice would you give to a person? It's like, hey, I'd like to improve my worship experience. I'd like to sing better.
Well, I think if it's just wanting to learn to sing better, I think there's nothing like just practice. Just singing along to music that you like. Singing along to music that you listen to in the car. Just practice. Your vocal cords are muscles, and just like any muscle part of your body, I think it just takes practice. I since we've been in quarantine and not been able to go to the gym, I've been trying to pull out these P90X videos again, and it's amazing how you just lose stuff when you don't use it. I'm trying to do yoga, and I'm like, oh my gosh, like I'm trying to do this weird pose where you're like reaching behind and grabbing underneath your leg, and I'm like,
I know. I've seen that video. I've done that video. Tony, what's his name? Tony.
Yeah.
I know.
Can't remember his last name. Mm-hmm. But then after a few times, it's like, okay, I can hold that pose for 4 seconds now. And
right.
Eventually it'll be longer. So I think it's just you have to practice. You have to exercise those chords. You have to try and not be afraid to try. And I think if it comes to somebody leading songs, I think there too, just you learn there's nothing like just practicing and trying and maybe your venue isn't a regional service, but maybe it's Bible talk. But I mean, that's how I learned to song lead, and I learned to worship lead from song leading. So it was kind of a good place to come from. Like you mentioned, a cappella traditions. So even today, if I lead songs at a conference and I've got my guitar or something, I'm still coming from the place of a cappella song leading. So it's all about connecting with the audience or with their voices and kind of leading them rather than showcasing my ability. So,
Right.
but you learn that through practicing with groups. And so, I started leading songs in my teen ministry, leading, well, my evangelist or whatever.
Okay. Now that's helpful. So just good practice. What advice would you give smaller churches with limited resources during this pandemic? Because I mean, it's almost discouraging, Brian. Like we're in a relatively small church, regional church, and I mean, you go online and you see what's going on in terms of musical talent on some of the larger churches, and you see like songs being sung simultaneously, like 9 different parts, and you're like, oh my gosh, we can't even, we can barely get one song leader to lead a song. What advice would you give to worship during this time when it's really impacted worship probably the most?
Yeah. Yeah, it's definitely hard, and I've been there myself. We've been doing most of our stuff live, but we've had some services where we kind of pre-taped it, and then I was only had one little live chunk, so the worship was all like on my TV, and I'm trying to sing in my living room along with it, and it's hard to connect. It's much harder to connect. I think it takes teaching through it, teaching people to take time to quiet yourself, to use this time. That you need it. You need time to just stop and reflect on God, and there's that part as far as teaching the congregation. But as far as the production aspect of it, or what you're putting out there for them to listen to, I think I think we've been stealing from other places and other groups. We've used Denver stuff, Chicago stuff. We had a kind of an international flavored service. I found stuff from like Justin Renton's church, and um, I think it's kind of cool to kind of have some worship from different places. I've used some of Mark Hoyle's stuff and San Diego stuff, and everything that we've done, I put in a folder and just said anybody that wants to use any of it, feel free to use anything here. Here's a folder with all the files, so I can share that with you if you want to use any of that.
That would be great. Where would we find it?
If you go to my website, if you just Google J. Brian Craig and then go to my blog, you follow that to my blog, or just look for my blog. It's called Monday Morning Music. There's a link on there that says there's a link on there that says virtual worship videos or something like that, and that will take you there to a bunch of YouTube links that you can use a YouTube downloader and download them. Or I also made a folder with like the files that you can download. Somebody can always email me or something too, and I'll email them a link to that folder.
Right.
But as far there's still nothing like hearing from your own people. So I think having your own people do it is cool too. Even if it's somebody who's gifted, a singer with a ukulele or something like that on an iPhone, it can still be good if it's if there's not background noise, and if you use some kind of basic mic techniques and stuff like that. Those mashup videos we've done quite a few of them. They're fun, but they're very labor intensive. It's not, people think it's just, you just get everybody on a call and everybody performs or something, but that's not how it's done. It looks kind of like that, but it's done through compiling each individual thing and then a lot of editing work to put it all together.
It looks tough. It looks really challenging. I guess you have to align all the tracks to.
Yeah.
Oh boy.
Yeah, the way I do it is I do the audio first, and so
is there like a soundtrack that it's built on? Everyone's singing the same, like guitar place, a guitar accompaniment.
Yeah, so I'll make a guide track, which is just when I first started doing it, I would put just the instruments on it, but then people would sing out a key, and so then I realized, they need something with all the vocals on there. So I'll make a guide track that's basically the full song, and then people will sing along to it. So they're wearing headphones, so you can't hear the guide track. They can hear the guide track, but the camera can't hear it. And then just record it on a cell phone or something, them singing along with that guide track in their headphone. And then you take all of those voices, and I'll pull all the audio off and put it into a multi-track audio system. I use Logic, but Logic is just kind of a pro version of GarageBand. You could use GarageBand, which
How
is
about
free on a
Audition?
Mac.
Could you use Audition?
I don't know that program, but probably if it allows you to have multi-tracks, you
Yeah.
definitely could.
Okay.
And then I just put all the audio in there and get it sound mixed really well and sounding good. And then I export that, so that's one sort of my final audio mix. And then you go into your video editor, and you don't use the original audio from the videos. You just sync each one of those videos to that audio that you've put together.
Wow.
So it's kind of labor intensive, but I just kind of look at it as, well, this is something that let people know about our church. It becomes kind of a media piece that you can use in the future.
It's neat. It's really cool looking, and a little daunting too for a smaller church as well. So that's great. Thank you for doing that.
But even a couple people, I mean, we did a song. We did the song "Oh Come to the Altar" with my daughter singing, and I just sang a really quiet backup vocal to her, and just she was playing ukulele, and I was playing my my little nylon string guitar, the one I told you I bought from the garage sale.
You still have it.
In college, I still have it. So, and that's like my favorite song that we've done. I mean, I'm partial because it's my daughter, but it turned out great. It's just one microphone. That's kind of that's where American music comes from, is folk music. It's just people with, simple, and they would know the folk recordings. It would just be one microphone and people gather around it, and kind of add their harmonies. So it can be done simply. That recording is just one microphone, and my daughter singing and me singing and her playing ukulele and me playing, but no multi-track, no anything, just one, just a microphone like this, this is $100 microphone, but just a large diaphragm mic. So even if you have a smaller church and you go, okay, if you just use GarageBand and a USB mic, I think a good mic does help, but even something like that and two people, singing softly, it can be really moving.
That's great. Thank you for the practicals. That's good. It's interesting. There's only one time I've ever written a song, and it was when I was dating Pam, and I don't know why, but I pulled out my old guitar that I had stored away.
Nice.
And I started messing around with it, and I came up with a song. It's called Sent from Heaven, and I talk about how God sent her. She came from Egypt. She had been on a mission team,
cool.
and she came into San Francisco, and I wrote that song and I performed it for her, and I've never been able to write a song since that time. But I still got that song. She still has the original lyrics that I wrote
awesome.
for her. It's posted on our bedroom wall, and it's really cool. But I'd like to write some more songs. I go, okay, if I did it once, I guess I could do it again.
You absolutely could.
But if a person wanted to start writing songs, where would they start? I mean, there was so much powerful emotion going on at that time. It was it just came to me. I don't even know how I came up with the music or anything like that. It was totally intuitive. But where would a person start?
Well, that's great. I wrote a bunch of songs for Dessa too in college, and most of them are so cheesy that I can't really share them. One is called "You're My Dream Come True." Another one is "You Are My Friend." You are my friend. The time I spend with you, I wish would never end.
Wow.
Just like really, really cheesy, but
Sounds like
good.
John Denver.
I can't make love songs very good and not have them be cheesy. I told Elias, right? Elias DeLoach.
Yes, of course.
So he writes love songs that are so deep and so good. I told him, man, your songs are not cheesy at all. But so what I do is I just get, and I don't know if you're like this or if other people are like this. I hear some people are like this. Sometimes I just get a little melody in my mind, like just a little riff, and I don't know if it's already a song or if it's just something new. A lot of times it's when I've been listening to music, like if I've just had music on or something, and then I'll just be walking around the house. Maybe I'm doing the dishes, or like I said, I would, told you that story where I was walking the floors, cleaning cleaning
Right.
the trays up.
Right.
But I'll just get some little melody in my mind. And so I think that the main thing is to capture those things. Sometimes it might be also if you pick up an instrument, if you're learning an instrument, if you're like playing uh, learning some scales, or you're learning a song, but sometimes you just play some chords and you're like, huh, I kind of like how that sounds.
Mm-hmm.
I think just capture. I've always had a discipline of capturing those things. I used to, way back when I had this. I don't know if you ever did. You ever have like a Palm Pilot?
Oh yeah, late
And then
'90s.
the one
Sure.
after that was
Yeah.
the Compact. Did you ever have
Yep.
the Compact
And I didn't hear about
iPad?
that. No.
Okay, so the thing with the thing after the Palm Pilot was a Compact iPac. It was called. I had that, and I would make recordings on that, little memos, and then of course once I got an iPhone, I use that all the time. So like, if, on here I've got all of these are just little voice memos of just song, little snippets of things.
Right.
And sometimes I don't know.
So there's a lot there. That's a lot.
Yeah, and sometimes it's like got a melody. I mean what do you call it? A lyric to it. But sometimes it's just like a little something.
Right.
And then I might go back and listen back to those, and it's funny because I don't remember even doing them, but I'm just gonna play one here at random
Sure.
so you can hear what I'm talking about. Yeah, I have no remembrance of that, but but the little hook there is da 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 da, and sometimes I like the sound. This is maybe a little more advanced, but I like the sound of certain syllables,
Right.
and so like I gave it the name "Blown Apart to Oblivion" because the melody, I like the sound "blown apart to oblivion." So then So then I might turn that into a song that has kind of a similar sound to it, but
Right.
it's more after I figure out what I want to write about, and maybe it's, uh, something that sounds like Oblivion, but it's not Oblivion. It's
Right. Change the
Olivia,
lyrics.
Olivia. Yeah, maybe
Right.
it's about Olivia. I don't know, but so just capturing little things like that, and then another thing I'll capture uh, is songs I want to write about. So a lot of times I'll read a psalm and I'm like, oh, that would make a great song. Or I'll read a scripture and I'll go, that would make a great song. And I just, like I look right now. So I have a song ideas note in my Mac, or it syncs to your iPhone as well. But so I it's just called song ideas, and I just have, I don't know, hundreds of little things, like I'll just I'll just pick something at random. Public spectacle, purpose of crucifixion. Okay, so like the crucifixion, the purpose of it was basically, it's like here we're gonna put somebody on a billboard. That's
Right.
kind of the purpose of it. It's
Right.
like they would put crosses at heavily traveled areas, and so we're just, here's what they did, and here's, for all to see. So I don't know, at some point I must have thought that would be an interesting communion song to talk about that aspect of the
Right.
cross, how it was meant to be a public spectacle, but maybe now it's the glory of God or something. I don't know, but or it might not even be spiritual. It might be something having to do with something going on right now, or like you mentioned, there's a lot of emotion in the thing with your relationship with Pam. So I think emotion is a great place to it's very cathartic, even if you're writing a song just for you and God, or just for you and a friend. It's very cathartic to put your emotion into music.
Right.
So if you suffer from a loss, we went through a really hard year, 2017. I wrote a lot of songs that are just, it was just cathartic.
Yeah.
But yeah, it does something for you to put that pain into. I mean, that's why I think most pop songs are breakup songs.
Right. Exactly.
They're almost all breakup songs, because I think people feel pain, and they either they want to express it in music or they want to hear music that speaks to their pain that they're in the moment, you know?
Yeah, exactly. Well, Brian, I really appreciate all the time you put into this. I just want to ask you a few more questions. You've done some really amazing things. I mean, you've got, Scott Adams, the author of Dilbert, talks about talent stacking and how, you know, you don't have to be the LeBron James of any one particular thing, but if you're pretty good at a lot of different things and develop talents in different areas, you can become really an amazing person. And I see that in you. I see how you're a great preacher. You are a songwriter and a performer, and now you're a teacher. I go, you've got all these different. You're developing skills. You've got this aspect of technical skill and that you learn, and so you've kind of stacked a bunch of different talents that's made you a very powerful individual. And I think that's something that needs to be noted is how you put together and kind of stack talents one on another. And maybe, you yourself have said, hey, maybe you're not the most complicated songwriter, but along with your other talents, it's really having a kingdom-wide impact. What when you look back on your career, what makes you the most proud?
That's a good question. I mean, career-wise, I don't know. I mean, there's different things. I think definitely, I mean, in terms of what we're talking about with worship and music and all that, I think a high water mark was the World Discipleship Summit in 2012, just being able to be a part of that, being able to work with Mike Tolliver on that, what we were trying to do. I think just the whole spirit of it. I loved that God worked it out so we could worship in the round. I mean, if I could, I would have every service be like that. I just love being in the round, and there was something so powerful about pushing audio out from the team in the center to the congregation, and then from all four sides voices coming back in. That the singing was just incredible. It was just one of those. It was really a mountaintop experience.
It really was. It was, and it was something I'll never forget.
Yeah, it was just so incredible. So just to have been involved in that, I don't think, there's, like I said, there's people who are more talented than me. I got to do it with my best friend Marshall Mead. He played electric, and he's like, there's so many better electric players, but it's not about that, right? It's about it's not about who's on stage. It's about the group, the family. But so I just felt honored to be a part of that and to get to coordinate all that and just to be there for that. This one that we were supposed to be at this weekend or next weekend, Marshall asked me to head that one up, and in this case, it was like, I think it'd be better to have the younger generation take it on. I appreciate that, the opportunities I've had, and so I recommended Tony Fernandez, who's there in Florida, and and some of these. We have some amazing young worship leaders in our fellowship of churches. Case Sam Perkins in Denver, and I don't want to start naming names because I'll leave somebody out. But
right.
But I just recommended them, and Chase McIntosh, and I just recommended that they take it, and I'll just kind of advise. But it was hard because I love it so much. It was hard to do that, but I feel like for the good of the church, it's better for the church to have. I mean, that's what 2020 Vision is all about, is I feel like the younger generation taking the torch and taking it on. And part of it is coming to grips with my own middle age. I don't like, I said in a sermon maybe a year ago, like I'm almost approaching middle age or something like that, and people started mocking me as I'm preaching. Like, no, you hit middle age a while ago. I was like, well, if I live to 90, then if I live to 100, then that's technically 50 is middle. So, because it's middle age is tough on musicians and rockers, and we don't. Yep. Only youth is valued in the music industry,
right?
So I've had to learn to embrace my dadness and my middle age, But I feel like I've kind of come through the other side of that a little bit.
Oh my gosh, absolutely. So I guess we won't be seeing you on tour with Journey and Steve Miller Band, I guess.
No.
Okay. Any final words that you'd like to give to a person that wants to make a difference with their life? They're thinking, hey, I want to make this life count. I've only got one life. I want to give to God as much as I can, And any advice that you'd give them?
Well, I mean, you mentioned having multiple talents or whatever, and I've always kind of, I mean, I remember my best friend and I in high school when we'd studied the Renaissance men, how they would do all these different things. We both were like, that's what we want to be. We want to be Renaissance men. We want to science and art and music, and why not do all of it,
Right.
and that kind of, I just love learning. I love learning different things, and I think we are living in an age that you can learn anything you want to learn. You can grow in so many different ways. So don't stop growing. Like don't just settle for who you are today. Like learn new things. I mean, I appreciate learning to play guitar for your you're a seasoned evangelist, church planter, the go-to man for how do you plant a church, and he's looking at my videos for how to play guitar.
That's right. Oh,
so
boy.
humbled by that. But I think we can always learn new things. I feel like I'm still learning new things about recording and mixing, and this COVID's been a great time for that. Putting those videos together, I feel like I've grown a lot just in using some of these tools. So I think if you start with whatever you do, you want to serve God, and I always tell God, I'm here to serve you, God, and whatever I'm doing is an offering for you, because you'll be tested in that, if it's about your art or if it's about your job, or if, like my goal in life can't be my success in ministry, right? It has to be pleasing God, and
right.
If that's in the full-time ministry, great. If it's not, amen. Like I have to be surrendered. So it has to be whatever I'm doing is for God, and God has made us in His image. The Imago Dei, that we are creators, we're cultivators. We want to do stuff, and there's something about that, learning something new or creating something new or growing, that it's invigorating. So I think don't wait to be asked by somebody. Just or just step out and learn something or do something or produce something. I kind of, to go back to the thing about worship leading or music or art, I think a lot of times people, I go to a lot of art, we'll do conferences with artists or musicians, or get-togethers of musical people, and a common thing I hear is nobody's asking me for my art, or nobody is affirming my art, or my evangelist doesn't get my gifts, or that kind of, I know that frustration of feeling
right.
like I have a gift but I don't have an opportunity to use it. I just say there's never been a better time to be able to share your gift, even if it's just creating a YouTube channel and sharing songs that you wrote.
Right.
There's nobody holding you back. Don't and if God will build it, like
right.
along the way. Like I look back at old songs I wrote. Some old songs are old recordings. Even the first CDs I put out, I knew they were bad. It was just, this is the best I can do,
right,
with the equipment I have and the voice I have, and I want to share these songs, so I'm putting this music together. I feel like God told me to put this music together, and so I'm just going to do it. And it's not perfect, and
right.
I think a lot of artists are perfectionists, and so they're like, I'm going to hold my art until it's perfect. And I just say, don't do that. Just share it with the world. When you're surrendered to God and it's about Him, then you can do that.
Right. Exactly.
Because it's not about you anyway. And so if people like it, if they don't like it, you don't take it personally. So
yeah, boy, Brian, thank you so much for your time, and that's inspiring advice. And the thing that impresses me about you is there's a lot of humility. In spite of the fact that you're in the spotlight literally quite a bit, you haven't been actively seeking the spotlight, and you're using your gifts and your interests to serve the kingdom of God, which I certainly respect, and just want to wish you all the best going forward. In my mind, you're a youngster. You've got many, many more years ahead of you, and I really appreciate that. And I want to thank you for listening today to the Rob Skinner podcast. My goal is to inspire you to make this life count, to live a no regrets life, and to multiply disciples, leaders, and churches. If you enjoyed the program, I'd like to ask you to share it with your friends and subscribe to the podcast. Have a great day, and make this life count.